Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we really plunge into some groundbreaking ideas, pull out the core insights, and try to make them accessible for you. Today, wow, we're embarking on something genuinely revolutionary. It's a framework that seriously challenges pretty much everything we thought we knew about life, about space, even consciousness itself. We're diving deep into the extraordinary work of Philip Lillian, specifically his framework of life as stabilized coherence in a hyperfractal fan space. Now, that's a mouthful, but the claim is huge and, honestly, quite startling. It says life isn't just some lucky chemical accident, against impossible odds. Instead, it suggests life is an inherent, maybe even inevitable property of the universe's fundamental structure.
Exactly. And importantly, this isn't just like philosophical hand-waving, which can be fascinating, sure, but often hard to pin down. Lillian puts forward a really detailed ontology, basically, a theory of how reality actually works at its most fundamental level. And it comes with, incredibly rich predictive power. The core argument is surprisingly elegant, but immensely far-reaching. Life emerges sort of naturally and automatically from processes baked into the very geometry and the dynamics of space itself.
Okay, wow. So to really get our heads around that, you mentioned some key tools, concepts we need to understand.
That's right. To really grasp this, we need to explore three core ideas that form the backbone here. First, there's the Finsler coherence hyperfractal phase space. Let's just call it FCHP. Much easier. Second, a unique way to quantify all this called Noetherian-Finsler Numbers, or NFNs. And third, something called the Coherence Directional Gradient, or CDG. Each one kind of builds on the last, and together they paint this picture of a cosmos that isn't just, allowing life, but where life is almost a foundational principle.
All right, let's unpack that first one then. FCHP. It's about space, right? But not space as we usually think of it. I mean, normally we think of space as, empty, right? A big passive 3D box where stuff happens. Like the stage, but not an actor.
Exactly. That's the classical view. But Lillian's FCHP concept just completely flips that, turns it on its head. He's saying space isn't just a backdrop. It's active. It's alive, maybe. A participant in how reality unfolds.
Okay, alive is a strong word. How do we even begin to conceptualize that? What does active mean here?
It's definitely a radical departure. So FCHP isn't this inert void. It's dynamic. It's coherence-generating. It's a hyperfractal phase space. Imagine space itself is constantly, inherently generating the conditions for order, for complexity. It's not just the stage. It's maybe the conductor, the orchestra, and the score all working together.
And coherence is key here. What does that mean in this context? Not just in sync.
Right. It's deeper than just being in sync. Think of coherence here as organized energy, or a unified pattern, information that holds together, that, resists falling apart into randomness, into chaos. It's like the universe has this inherent tendency towards creating and maintaining order.
Okay, so space is structured by this order-generating coherence. Let's break down the FCHP acronym then. Finslerian, hyperfractal, phase space. What do those actually mean here?
Absolutely. Let's take them one by one. First, Finslerian. Think about a regular map. Flat surface. Shortest distance between 2 points. Straight line. Doesn't matter which way you go, right? Standard Euclidean geometry. But in a Finslerian space, the geometry itself depends on the direction you're moving. Imagine a landscape where, walking uphill is fundamentally different geometrically than walking downhill. Or the fabric of space as a grain.
So distance or connection depends on direction.
Exactly. It's sensitive to what Lillian calls these anisotropic coherence flows, meaning the structure of space itself cares about the direction and the flow of this organized energy within it. It's not a uniform grid. It's more like a nuanced directional tapestry. It responds to the dynamics inside it.
Okay, so not static. It has preferences almost. A warp and weave. What about hyperfractal? We know fractals like snowflakes, branching trees.
Right, where similar patterns repeat at different scales. Lillian takes this concept, hyperfractal, much further. It means FCHP is structured through these recursive, self-similar patterns of coherence itself, not just physical shapes. And this happens across all scales of existence. Think fractals of fractals, but made of organizational patterns. Patterns of order echoing and building on themselves from the quantum level right up to the cosmic. It allows for incredible complexity in nested structures.
Wow, okay. And the last part, phase space. That sounds familiar from physics, position, and momentum.
It is, but he generalizes it in a really profound way.
Yeah, traditionally, fast space combines position and momentum, gives you a snapshot of a particle state. But in FCHP, it's this unified, multidimensional map. It combines position, momentum, and these broader coherence fields, plus the potentials that shape their curvature. It's the arena where geometry, energy, and this fundamental idea of coherence are all merged. unified into one seamless reality.
That's a lot to take in. So space is dynamic, directional, fractally organized by coherence, unified with energy. What's the big takeaway, the main implication of redefining space like this?
The implication is genuinely profound. Lillian calls FCHP a resonant ontology. This means it's not just a backdrop. It's a dynamic substrate, modulated by coherence. And from this substrate, everything we experience, dimensions, time, organized life, doesn't just appear. It emerges naturally, inevitably.
Yeah.
He's saying every single point in this FCHP contains intrinsic coherence gradients, like subtle currents of order.
Currents of order. Yeah, and they're not passive. They actively shape the form and function of whatever arises in that space. So reality isn't just random particles bouncing around. It's a dynamic, coherence-driven unfolding. Order is inherent, active.
That is a massive leap from just empty space.
Yeah.
But, okay, how do you quantify this living, breathing FCHP? It sounds so abstract. You need a language, right? Units.
Yes, you absolutely do. And that's precisely where the Noetherian-Finsler Numbers, the NFNs, come in. Lillian introduces NFNs as a four-tuple quantization system. It's designed specifically to discretize this ontological field. Think of it as the quantum language of coherence. It gives us discrete, fundamental units to describe and maybe even activate the coherent structure of space.
Yeah.
Each NFN four-tuple isn't just a number, it's like an ontological quantum, a fundamental packet of directed coherence geometry.
A four-tuple, so 4 parts to each NFN. Can you walk us through those? What are these 4 fundamental building blocks of order?
Sure thing. The NFN four-tuple is written as N, 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 N. Each number captures a crucial aspect of how coherence is structured and, importantly, maintained. So N here is gradient directionality. This first number encodes the precise orientation of the coherence flow, like an intrinsic compass needle for the field. It establishes an irreversible bias, a direction, in the local phase space. It tells coherence where to flow, how to flow to create order. It's the initial vector, the first choice reality makes.
Okay, direction. What's area?
N is topological invariance. Now, think of this one as the system's identity preservation code. It represents a conserved field symmetry. Basically, it ensures that as coherence changes or moves across scales, its fundamental structural identity, its unique pattern or blueprint stays intact.
Like a spiral stays a spiral, even if it gets bigger.
Exactly like that. It's crucial for things like heredity, the stable replication of complex forms over time. It conserves the shape information.
Makes sense. And
N is spin torsion coupling. This one quantizes the field curvature, specifically how it localizes into geometric spirals. Think about how DNA twists, right? Or galaxy arms coiling, water down a drain. This number captures that inherent tendency of coherence to twist and turn, forming helices or vortexes. It's about the geometry of these localized twists, foundational to so many natural forms.
twist and turn. Got it. And the last one, N.
N is negentropic potential. This one's really crucial. It measures the system's ability to retain coherence, to resist dissipation or falling apart. Essentially, it's about how well a coherent system fights off chaos, how well it maintains its internal order over time. Think of it as a measure of organized energy density or information density that a system can hold on to.
So it's like the anti-entropy factor, resisting decay.
Precisely. It's the force that actively holds order together against the constant pull towards disorder.
Okay, so N arrow direction, N arrow identity, N twist, N stability. You put those 4 together in an NFN tuple.
Right.
What do they do? How do these abstract numbers connect to the real world?
Right, so each complete NFN four-tuple, it acts like a cosmic Lego brick, but a smart one. It functions both as a kind of fundamental instruction packet in computation, like a bit of code, and as a structural seed in morphogenesis, the development of form. This means these quantized templates aren't just descriptive labels, they are actively involved in shaping reality. Life, if you view it as the self-assembling resonance system, fundamentally relies on these NFN-encoded templates. They provide the scaffold for its emergence and its structure. They're the basic building blocks of coherent organization, the universe's code for life.
Fascinating. Okay, so we have this living space, FCHP.
Yeah.
And we have a way to quantify its coherence, NFNs. But what's the active director here, the sculptor? What tells the coherence where to go, how to twist, what to build using these NFN bricks?
Yeah, good question. That's the role of the Coherence Directional Gradient, the CDG. The CDG is the primary organizing operator within FCHP. It functions as the architectural compass for emergence. It's the dynamic force that encodes and directs the coherent processes, giving them shape, direction, purpose.
An operator. And what are its specific jobs? How does it actually sculpt reality?
The CDG performs several key active functions, really essential for life and form as we know it. First, it encodes chirality, Handedness. Essential for asymmetry. Think about our hands mirror images, but you can't superimpose them.
Right, like in molecules.
Exactly. Crucial in biology. The universal amino acids, D sugars. All life uses these specific versions. The CDG imprints this fundamental handedness onto the field itself, dictating which left or right version gets favored. Second, it generates torsional spin flows. This actively localizes coherence into spiral vectors. This is where those twisting, spiraling forms we see everywhere, DNA, whirlpools, galaxies, actually originate. The CDG literally spins and coils the coherence into these shapes, creating these dynamic, localized centers of order.
So it's actively twisting space, in a sense.
In a sense, yes, twisting the coherence field. Third, it introduces irreversible directality. This basically lays down the arrow of time within these coherence fields, like a gradient descent. It establishes a preferred direction for processes, ensures things move forward, evolve, develop, rather than just staying static or reversing randomly, gives time its directionality within these systems. And finally, fourth, it enables negentropic stabilization. It actively resists decoherence, fights against chaos. It does this by concentrating these phase gradients into attractors' stable patterns. It pulls order together and holds it, preventing it from dissolving.
So the CDG is really the architect and the driving force here. It's not just watching. It's actively shaping the fabric of reality.
Precisely. You can think of the CDG as the template director of form and function. It projects the order that's inherent in the field into physical things, physical instantiations. From the incredibly precise structure of biomolecules, the pathways of metabolism, right up to complex processes like cognition and consciousness, it's the blueprint and the builder rolled into one fundamental operator.
Okay, this leads us right to the core. The really profound claim of Lillian's work. Life isn't just a chemical accident, right? Not a fluke in an indifferent universe. He's saying it's a natural resonance attractor within this FCHP space. An inevitable unfolding that completely turns conventional biology on its head.
It really does. In this framework, life isn't just something that happens once you get enough complex chemicals together. Its emergence is driven by inherent processes. There's this topological continuity of coherence flows across scales, meaning the same basic principles organizing a cell also organize a planet, maybe even a galaxy. It's continuous. There's geometric encoding of symmetry breaking. Think cell membranes, DNA helices. These aren't accidental shapes. They're structurally imposed by the field. You see algebraic conservation of negentropy through these NFNs, making sure order is preserved, even amplified. And crucially, there's this directional recursion towards increasing coherence complexity. Evolution isn't just random mutation and selection. It's a driven, inherent process towards greater organization.
So life isn't just about survival. It's actively, inherently trying to increase its own internal coherence. Like the universe is hardwired to generate more and more complex order.
That's the idea. Life is framed as a negentropic phase-locked loop. It's a recursively stabilized coherence system. Time gets structured, matter gets organized, intelligence becomes the self-sustaining resonance. It's a system designed, you could say, by the very fabric of the universe to resist entropy and continuously amplify order.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. Lillian doesn't just say life is inevitable. He lays out a specific pathway, right? 7 recursive stages, a coherence biogenesis pathway.
Right.
It sounds like a cosmic development plan for life itself. Can you guide us through these steps? What NFNs get activated? What are the physical correlates?
Absolutely. This pathway, visualized sometimes as a spiral, maps life's journey from a pure coherence seed all the way to essentially self-aware intelligence. It unfolds in stages of increasing complexity. Stage, I-coherent seed initiation. This is right at the beginning. From de-neuro to dim. Think of the omnilectic point, the primordial origin, pure coherence. It manifests its very first directional asymmetry. The universe takes its first biased step. The NFN signature here, NRO, gradient directionality, emerges from nothing, from undifferentiated symmetry, the initial spark of directed flow. Its function is just to establish that fundamental arrow of coherence, an irreversible bias, gives direction to everything that follows. The physical correlate would be incredibly subtle before particles even exist. Maybe local anisotropies in the quantum vacuum, protospin currents starting to form, the very first flicker of directed order in the quantum foam.
Wow, okay. Stage 1 is just directionality. What happens next? Stage 2.
Stage 2, spin torsion lattice formation. Now we go from dim to dim. Building on that initial direction, torsion spin nodes emerge. Rotational coherence starts. The field begins to twist. NFN signature. Now nest spin torsion coupling gets activated. Protochelical geometries start forming. function. This converts that linear directionality from stage I into stable rotational loops. These loops are vital. They can trap and concentrate in entropy, stop it from just dissipating. They're like fundamental containers for order. Physical correlate. Think maybe stable, tiny, eddy-like vortexes in subatomic fields, or early, subtle chiral pre-patterns tendencies towards handedness starting to solidify.
So first direction, then twist. What's stage 3? Dim to dim.
Stage 3, chirality field differentiation. This is where robust, asymmetric handedness forms within the coherence field itself, not just a random preference, a deep structural bias, NFN signature. You get a powerful fusion here of N and N. This generates persistent left-right asymmetry across scales. Function, absolutely crucial, sets the geometric handedness template for all future molecular organization in biology. Dictates which spatial version of a molecule will form. Physical correlate. This directly explains the universal L bias in amino acids' protein building blocks and the D bias in sugars' carbohydrate building blocks, fundamental to all known life.
So the universe literally has a built-in handedness bias, and that dictates life's basic chemistry. That's not just a biological quirk, it's cosmic.
That's exactly the argument. It's inherent to the FCHP structure guiding life's building blocks. Not arbitrary, built in.
Okay, what's stage 4? Dim to dim-io.
Stage 5e, resonant polymerization. Now, with stable handedness set, long-chain molecules start forming, and they form along these established coherence vector lines, like they're guided by an invisible scaffold. NFN signature. N, negentropic potential, gets activated. This is vital. It prevents decoherence as these complex structures grow. Function. It encodes resilience against random noise. It does this by phase-locking these chains into coherent, stable bonds. Makes them robust enough to carry complex information, perform functions. Physical correlate. We're talking proto-DNA, proto-RNA polymers, stabilized, guided by these underlying resonant scaffolds, ensuring they hold together in a noisy environment.
Guided formation of complex molecules. Stage V.
Stage V, coherence boundary formation. This marks the emergence of membrane-like negentropy capsules, enclosures that protect and isolate these coherent domains. NFN signature. Now, the full four-tuple NFN, NNNNN, is activated, all four working together to create these self-organizing boundaries. Function. These boundaries create protected internal zones, allows for recursive coherence amplification inside. The internal order can intensify, stabilize without being constantly disrupted by the outside. They're like sophisticated coherence filters. Physical correlate. This maps directly onto lipid vesicles, early protocell membranes, not just passive walls, but active, maybe even intelligent boundaries.
So cells aren't just building walls, they're creating these coherence fortresses, almost intentional sounding.
Yeah.
How does that fortress maintain itself against chaos?
Do this active maintenance of coherence. Yeah, the boundary actively sculpts its internal environment using these principles. It's a dynamic process.
Okay, stage 6.
Stage 6, recursive coherence encoding. Here, internal coherence maps start to replicate. They use self-similar fractal loops. This is the essence of information transfer, of heredity. NFN signature. N-ear, topological invariance, is dominant here. It ensures that structural identity is conserved across generations. The pattern gets copied faithfully. Function. Ensures generational persistence. Reliable transfer of these field-encoded templates. Allows complex organization and information to be passed on consistently. Physical correlate. This is where the genetic code emerges in its functional form, along with topologically preserved replication processes, the very heart of heredity and evolution.
Passing on the coherent pattern.
Yeah.
And the final stage, stage 7.
Stage 7, autonomous coherence intelligence. In this final, most complex stage, these protocells integrate sensing, response, and self-modification. They become truly autonomous agents. NFN signature, a kind of meta-operator microstate, forms. This unifies the observer function and the coherence symmetry function within the system itself. Function enables life to actively maintain its coherence against external pressures. It becomes an agent in its own right, a localized, self-stabilizing unit that participates in shaping its own reality. Physical correlate. This corresponds to primitive cognition. Think chemotaxis, a cell moving towards food, away from toxins. Early biofield signaling, laying the groundwork for complex awareness, true intelligence.
That is quite a journey. From an invisible directional bias, a subtle twist, all the way to primitive intelligence, all apparently guided by these fundamental coherence principles. It really does paint life as this inevitable unfolding, not just a lucky break. That journey through biogenesis leads perfectly into this idea of the biofield. Now, for many people, biofield might sound a bit ethereal, or maybe just a side effect of complex biology, an epiphenomenon. But Lillian's framework seems to position it as something much more fundamental, almost like a guiding blueprint.
Oh, it's far from a side effect here. It's absolutely central. In the FCHP NFN ontology, the biofield is presented as the primary morphogenetic lattice. What that means is biological matter doesn't just randomly clump together through chemistry. It literally follows these resonance patterns.
Yeah.
Shape doesn't just emerge from molecules bumping into each other. It follows pre-existing coherence templates. From the zygote, the very first cell, right up to a fully formed adult, development unfolds along these incredibly sophisticated pre-existing coherence maps. And these maps are embedded in the hyperfractal structure of space itself.
So the biofield is essentially a pre-physical blueprint, an energetic scaffold that guides exactly how cells arrange themselves, like an invisible architect for life.
That's a great way to put it. An invisible architect. The biofield emerges directly from those coherence directional gradients, the CDGs, seeded way back in early biogenesis. And the NFNs play specific critical roles in shaping this blueprint. N-Euro, gradient directionality, sets up the main morphogenetic axes, defines the lines the organism develops along head to tail, back to belly in an embryo, the initial compass for development. N, topological invariance, makes sure that as the organism grows, its spatial proportions are conserved. A limb doesn't just get longer, it keeps its correct shape relative to the body, guided by that underlying identity. N-US spin torsion coupling actively locks that torsional rotation into biological spirals. We see them everywhere. DNA's helix, the cochlea in your ear, how intestines coil. It's the universe's preferred way to make complex, efficient forms. And N, entropic potential, continuously maintains the morphogenetic stability. Ensures the developing form resists drifting into chaos, keeps its integrity during growth, the holding together force.
Wow, so the key idea then is cells aren't just responding to chemical signals, they're reading this field first.
That's the profound principle, yes. Cells read the field before differentiating. Morphology, biological form, becomes fundamentally a coherence interpretation. The cells are literally interpreting the information encoded within this active coherence field to know how to build themselves where to go.
That's a radical way to think about development. So morphogenesis, how an organism gets its shape, it's less like pure chemistry and more like dynamic crystallization, guided by this invisible field.
Exactly. Morphogenesis as local field crystallization. Coherent patterns solidifying into physical structure. And it's an active process with specific field-driven steps. First, gradient reading. Stem cells, those master cells, don't just grow randomly. They actively align their internal structures, especially microtubules within their cytoskeleton, to the NFN imprinted field lines in the biofield. They literally orient themselves, listening to the scaffold. Second, chiral locking. Those torsion spin nodes in the field, they actively dictate asymmetrical features. It's not random. Explains why your heart's usual on the left, why plant tendrils spiral a certain way. The field's inherent handedness imposes the bias. Third, boundary sculpting. The electrical charges across cell membranes, membrane potentials, they actively define organ boundaries and tissue shapes before the physical tissue is fully formed. The electrical blueprint precedes the physical structure. And fourth, field feedback. As structures grow, they aren't just passive, they actively modify the local coherence gradients around them. Creates this dynamic, continuous feedback loop. The developing form and the guiding field shape each other. It's co-creative.
Okay, and you mentioned bioelectricity earlier. If that's the visible shadow of this coherence scaffold, what does that mean for things like membrane voltages, which we see everywhere in biology?
It implies membrane voltages aren't just simple chemical gradients. They're direct phase markers of the deeper FCHP coherence. They reflect the underlying energetic organization of the biofield. And this leads to a powerful prediction, something testable. Bioelectric field alterations should precede visible anatomical changes. During development, during regeneration.
So if an animal is regrowing a limb,
you should see shifts in the bioelectric field, the pattern changing before you see new bone or muscle actually growing, hours, maybe days before, and the application. Maybe targeted coherence modulation could correct developmental problems or boost regeneration by directly influencing the biofield, guiding the growth.
And that universal chirality of amino acids desugars that biological mystery. This framework is it a reason?
It offers a very elegant explanation, yes. Biological chirality isn't arbitrary. It's not a random coin toss. It reflects the inherent handedness of the coherence field at the organism's scale. The biofield actively filters and guides the assembly of these molecules by imposing these NFN-derived chirality constraints. It's inherent selectivity, built into the universe's structure, not just a lucky choice made early in life's history. The ontological implication here is huge. The organism is the biofield, just temporarily stabilized into matter. Death, then, isn't just chemistry stopping. It's the dissipation of the biofield's coherent map. Regeneration is restoring part of that resonance signature.
All right, so we've got this incredibly detailed, pretty revolutionary framework, from space itself to life emerging to how biological forms are shaped by this biofield. But, for any scientific framework, the rubber has to meet the road. Testable hypotheses. How can we possibly test claims this grand? What should we look for if FCHP NFN is actually correct?
That is the critical question, absolutely, and Lillian tackles it directly. If this framework accurately describes reality, its principles have to show up in measurable, repeatable ways. This section outlines 5 specific predictive domains. He calls them the empirical gateways of coherence. Places where the theory can be tested, validated, or, just as importantly, potentially proven wrong through experiments. The first gateway is torsion spin anomalies in living systems. The prediction is biological tissues, unlike just inert matter, should exhibit unique torsion field signatures. Deviations from standard electromagnetic models. Why? Because NERO, that spin torsion coupling, is theorized to be actively involved in all morphogenetic processes in living things. The test would need high-sensitivity instruments, torsion balances, maybe advanced laser interferometry. These things are designed to detect tiny angular distortions in space. You'd look for these distortions correlated with biological activity growth, healing, cell division, the expected observation. Tiny micro-radian-scale torsional oscillations, like minute localized twists in space-time coming from the living samples. And crucially, these should be absent in dead or non-living controls. It would show a unique biological interaction with these deeper fields.
So living things might be interacting with a different kind of energy field, a twist in space itself, beyond just electromagnetism. That would rewrite physics textbooks.
It absolutely would. Okay, second gateway. Biofield phase shift, preceding morphological change. The prediction here is that bioelectric patterns, or maybe biophotonic patterns, the faint light emissions from living systems, these will shift and reorganize before any visible anatomical changes happen. This comes from the coupling of NEO directionality and N-negentropy, providing that stable order before physical form appears. For the test, you could use advanced bioelectric imaging. Things like voltage-sensitive dyes that light up with electrical changes or very sensitive electrode arrays, you'd watch these during limb regeneration in, say, salamanders, or map biophoton emissions during plant growth cycles. Expected observation. The subtle energy field patterns should clearly anticipate the physical structure. By hours, maybe even days, a clear lead time, the blueprint appearing before the building starts.
Okay, seeing the blueprint first, what's gateway number 3?
Gateway 3 is chirality bias as a function of field alignment, prediction. The ratio of L versus D enantiomers, those left and right-handed molecules in synthetic chemistry, could actually be shifted, controlled, by applying specific aligned portion fields. This comes straight from that idea of the chirality field emerging from CDG asymmetry and N-torsion spin. The test. You'd run controlled polymerization reactions, making amino acids or sugars in the lab, but inside an artificial torsion field, precisely aligned according to the predicted NFN chirality vectors. Expected observation. You'd see a significant reproducible shift away from the usual 50-50 mix. More left-handed, or more right-handed, depending on the field alignment. Direct proof of field influence on molecular handedness.
Wow, that would be huge for chemistry, drug development, materials, controlling handedness directly.
The implications are vast, yeah.
Fourth gateway. NFN-derived spectral signatures. Prediction. Living systems should emit very subtle signals light, maybe sound with discrete, specific spectral lines, and these lines should correspond directly to quantized NFN tuple ratios. The idea is each NFN tuple acts like a fundamental resonance harmonic in life's coherence lattice. Test. This needs Fourier analysis of extremely faint biophoton or bioacoustic emissions, requires incredibly sensitive detectors, advanced signal processing to find these specific, weak frequencies buried in noise, expected observation, finding stable, consistent frequency bands whose ratios match predicted NFN integer or fractional relationships, direct, measurable evidence of these quantized coherence units at work inside living things.
Like finding the universe's musical notes within life. Kind of, yeah. A harmonic signature of coherence. And finally, the fifth gateway, environmental coherence density and life emergence. Prediction. Regions on Earth, or maybe even in space, that have a higher environmental coherence density should show greater biodiversity, faster regeneration after damage, just more robust biological activity overall. Because if coherence gradients are life substrate, then more density should mean life emerges faster and recovers better. Test. This is ambitious. You need to map environmental coherence density across different areas using specialized interferometers, maybe torsion detectors. Then compare that map to biological data, ecosystem productivity, seed germination rates, healing times in local organisms. Compare high versus low coherence zones, expected observation, a statistically significant correlation. Higher coherence density linked to enhanced biological performance, more vibrant life, faster recovery, strong support for the whole framework.
These are definitely concrete, challenging experiments. But yeah, even a few pan out. But wouldn't just validate Lillian's framework. It would radically reshape biology, physics, maybe our whole view of reality. Now, this framework isn't just about Earth, is it? Or even our solar system. Lillian really broadens the view, right, to the whole cosmos, implying life isn't just possible out there, but inevitable.
That's exactly right. The FCHP NFN framework insists life isn't some rare accident on one small planet. It's a structural inevitability, a fundamental tendency of the universe itself. It happens whenever and wherever coherence gradients reach a certain threshold stability. And this applies everywhere: planets, stars, galaxies, maybe even between galaxies. Life, in this view, is a fractal inevitability. The same fundamental patterns and processes of coherence that birth life here. They repeat, they echo across all cosmic scales. The universe isn't just allowing life, it's inherently predisposed to create it.
So the universe isn't mostly dead space with a few lonely islands of life. It's more like a cosmic web of ordered energy, potentially teeming with life at different levels.
Precisely. You can see this in what Lillian calls cosmic coherence structures. First, think about the galactic coherence lattice. The idea is these hyperfractal coherence filaments thread through entire galaxies, like vast, large-scale biofield analogs for the galaxy itself. And the NFNs play roles here too. In directionality might align stellar orbits and galactic flows into stable, coherent supporting paths. N, Eros invariance, could preserve the galaxy's overall shape and symmetry over billions of years, and Euros might lock spiral arm twists into resonance with star formation zones, and N Euros would maintain the galaxy's overall order, resisting homogenization. The implication: star systems aren't just scattered randomly, they're likely embedded in these coherence-rich nodal zones within the galaxy, places inherently more favorable for life's emergence.
So a star's location within the galaxy relative to these cosmic filaments could actually predict its life potential, a whole new kind of galactic habitability zone.
Exactly. And it extends down to the stars themselves. Stellar coherence nodes. Stars aren't just fusion furnaces. They're theorized to act as coherence transformers. They take the vast hyperfractal gradients of the FCHP and convert them into stable radiation patterns that seed planetary atmospheres with order, with the raw materials for complexity. The prediction: stars in certain NFN-optimized torsion alignments, stars tuned particularly well to the cosmic coherence lattice, should host planets with significantly higher life potential, an observable marker, maybe unusual stability in the star's light fluctuations, or spectral output showing specific coherence harmonic frequencies, like the star is humming with a life-seeding resonance.
Okay, so what about planets then? Is habitability more than just the Goldilocks zone, the right temperature for liquid water?
Oh, absolutely. Planetary coherence density becomes a key predictor for biospheres. Habitability isn't just chemistry and temperature, it's about the planet's resonance fit with the local FCHP lattice. Key factors would be: how well is the planet aligned with the galactic torsion spin vectors? Does its magnetic field resonate with NFN chirality harmonics, acting like a coherent shield? And critically, is the environmental coherence density above the biogenesis threshold? A planet's inherent vibrational fit with cosmic coherence dictates its life potential, maybe even more than its physical specs.
This also completely reframes panspermia, doesn't it? It's not just microbes hitching a ride on asteroids anymore.
Yeah, panspermia reimagined. It moves beyond just material spores. In this view, life's blueprint isn't necessarily physical. It's a field resonance pattern, an energetic instruction set, and it's capable of phase locking to local materials on suitable planets. The really wild implication: the same coherent map, the same NFN-CDG instructions could independently tune in on different planets if the local conditions, the NFN ratios, the coherence density match up.
So life could emerge simultaneously in many places from the same cosmic instructions.
Exactly. Based on shared coherent instructions rather than needing physical transport over vast distances, like a universal broadcast signal for life, and planets tune in if they have the right coherence antenna.
So if life is inherent, inevitable, does that mean it's basically everywhere the conditions are right?
That leads to the cosmological inevitability curve. If these coherence gradients really permeate the cosmos, then life's emergence rate should follow a predictable function based on coherence density, low-density regions. minimal or no life. Threshold density, maybe sporadic life extremophiles. But high-density coherence nodes, those should inevitably lead to abundant, complex biospheres, rapid evolution. It implies vast regions of the cosmos are inherently predisposed to generating complex life. Makes it a cosmic standard, not a terrestrial miracle.
Okay, this whole framework, weaving together space, coherence, life's emergence, it all seems to build towards this final, really profound concept, the meta-operator. That sounds like it ties together some incredibly deep ideas: observation, maybe consciousness, the nature of existence itself.
It truly does. The meta-operator in the FCHP NFN framework is defined as this unified ontological operator. It combines two fundamental functions into one principle. First, the observer function, which is seen here as an asymmetry resonance operator, how a system interacts with and selects from potentials. Second, the coherence symmetry function, how a system maintains its own internal order and structure. These two are integrated. Now, applied to life, the implication is, well, profound. Every single living system, from a microbe to us, is seen as a local instantiation of this meta-operator. It means each living thing isn't just passively existing. It's a self-stabilizing coherence zone that actively participates in shaping and defining its reality.
Whoa, so life isn't just receiving information, it's actively involved in creating it, or at least curating reality. That's a massive philosophical shift.
Exactly. Life acts as this localized meta-operator through two intertwined processes. First, the observer function. Every organism constantly samples its environment. It effectively collapses or selects from the available coherence potentials, bringing them into a usable, localized form. It's an active perception, tuning in, making specific aspects of the universal coherence real for itself. Second, the coherence symmetry function. At the same time, that organism is actively maintaining and extending its own internal coherence, constantly fighting decoherence, holding itself together, sustaining its order, maybe even expanding its organizational sphere against chaos. The integration of these two means life doesn't just exist in reality, it actively curates, stabilizes portions of reality, defines its own existence through this dynamic interplay. Life as ongoing creation and stabilization.
That changes everything. And this idea scales up, from cells to whole ecosystems, even planets.
It does. It shows how biological systems are powerful coherence modulators across all scales. At the cellular level, things like microtubules, membranes, bioelectric fields aren't just doing chemistry. They're acting as complex coherence routers, directing and processing these flows. And the NFN structure is mirrored right there. N-arrow in membrane polarity guiding processes, N-arrow in the cytoskeleton stable shape, N in microtubule spiral geometry, N in membrane voltage and metabolism maintaining order. The cell itself is a tiny meta-operator. At the organismal level, complex behaviors, cognition, these aren't just neural activity. They act as large-scale coherence filters. Organisms select, process, amplify specific coherent patterns to navigate, respond, interact. Our minds filter and stabilize coherence. At the ecosystem level, the intricate web of species interactions, that distributes coherent stabilization across the whole network. A healthy, diverse ecosystem maintains this complex coherence, resisting disruption, acting as a larger meta-operator.
So the meta-operator isn't just individuals, it scales up to planets, even galaxies. That's truly cosmic.
Absolutely. At the planetary scale, entire biospheres act like global meta-operators. They actively sustain atmospheric hydrological coherence, keeping the planet far from thermodynamic equilibrium. They maintain the planet's ordered state, influencing climate cycles. And at the galactic scale, Lillian even suggests multiple biospheres within a dense galactic coherence arm might phase lock, exchange information via subtle field harmonics.
Interstellar communication, but not with radio waves.
Exactly. Communication through shared coherent patterns opens up incredible possibilities beyond SETI as we know it.
And what about consciousness? Where does awareness fit into this meta-operator idea? It sounds related.
The framework suggests consciousness isn't solely a product of complex brains. It's more like a distributed field effect, emerging where observations, sampling coherence, and coherence stabilization converge. Even primitive organisms with basic sensing and response are seen as microagents of this universal meta-operator. They contribute to shaping local coherence. Higher cognitive systems like ours emerge as fractal refinements of that same fundamental ontological function. Consciousness becomes an inherent capacity of the universe to observe and stabilize itself through coherent systems, not just a biological add-on.
This leads to some mind-bending predictions, doesn't it? Beyond just finding life.
It does. One measurable hypothesis. Life-rich regions of space should show distinct coherent spectral profiles compared to lifeless zones, resonances indicating multiscale meta-operator activity. Imagine detecting life just by listening to the coherence hum of a star system and the technological implication. Devices tuned to specific NFN-encoded coherence modes could, in theory, detect or even communicate with life across light years without sending rockets or radio signals.
A field-based internet, universal communication through resonance.
That's the potential implication. Completely transforms the search for ET.
Now, I know we've touched on some incredibly complex ideas.
Yeah.
FCHP, NFN, CDG, meta-operator. It's easy for this to sound purely conceptual, maybe even metaphorical. But you mentioned earlier, this isn't just philosophy. There's actual math behind this, right? A formal structure.
That's a crucial point, yes. This isn't just a collection of appealing ideas. Lillian presents it as grounded in rigorous mathematical formalism, tensor representations, field equations, the whole deal. We don't need to dive deep into the equations themselves. That's a whole other deep dive. But it's important to know they exist to convey the rigor behind the vision.
Okay, so just give us a flavor. What kind of mathematical objects are we talking about here?
All right, briefly. You've got the FCHP manifold, MFCHP itself, mathematically defined as a Finslerian hyperfractal phase space, embedding position, momentum, coherence, and this anisotropic metric we talked about. The NFN 4-tuple NF has specific mathematical representations for each component: N-euro gradient directionality, N-euro topological invariance, and spin portion coupling, and N-gentropic potential. These aren't just labels, they're mathematical quantities. The Coherence Directional Gradient, DCDG, is defined as an operator combining gradient and torsion directions with time dependence built in. It's a mathematical tool for directing coherence. The meta-operator is formalized to unify the observer function, asymmetry resonance, and the coherence symmetry function mathematically. There's a coherence flow equation describing how these coherence vector fields evolve under various influences, potential, torsion, decoherence effects, and a gentropy conservation law showing how coherence density changes, including a term for biological systems actively injecting the gentropy, pumping order into the system, a chirality field tensor, mathematically linking coherence and torsion fields to measurable asymmetries, like molecular handedness, a dimensional cascade function trying to describe how higher dimensions might emerge from coherence reduction processes, and even a biofield morphogenesis equation, BME, attempting to model how the morphogenetic field evolves under the influence of CDG, bioelectric fields, and coherence dynamics.
Oh, yeah, wow. So, yeah, definitely not just concepts. There's a whole mathematical engine underneath this trying to make it predictive and quantitative. Good to know. So we've really journeyed far today, from the very nature of space itself, this FCHP, through the emergence of life via specific stages guided by NFNs and CDGs, the biofield shaping form, potential ways to test it, its cosmic scale, and this unifying meta-operator. If you try to boil it down, the core message seems to be life isn't just a statistical blip in a neutral universe. It's the natural crystallization of coherence, an active self-organizing imperative.
That is the absolute core synthesis, yes. And across all these different aspects we've discussed, you can see 6 key principles recurring, forming the foundation. 1, NFN quantization, like a universal coordinate system for coherence geometry and its interactions. 2, CDGs as ontological compasses, actively directing emergence, shaping form from pure potentiality. 3, biofields as morphogenetic lattices, guiding biological form before matter fully solidifies. 4, the meta-operator, uniting observation and coherence maintenance into the defining principle of living systems. 5, the empirical gateways, showing clear paths for testing these profound predictions scientifically. And 6, cosmobiological embedding, revealing life not as a planetary accident, but a cosmic scale inevitability, a fundamental expression of the universe.
And the ontological implication of all that, it just shifts our whole understanding of what reality is, doesn't it?
It really does. The cosmos, in this view, isn't just a big, empty box holding life. The cosmos is life, unfolding at different scales, different phases of coherent stabilization. Think about it fractally. A cell is a microcosm of coherence. An organism is a nested fractal of it. A biosphere is a planetary scale meta-operator. A galaxy is a supercoherence lattice. The entire universe, maybe a hyperfractal life field. It paints a picture of a fundamentally animate cosmos. Life is baked into the very structure.
So it's not really a question of if life arises, but when and where the conditions of the coherent stability are met. It sounds almost like a law of nature.
Exactly. This leads directly to what Lillian calls the principle of resonant inevitability. It's a powerful, direct statement. If coherence gradients are an inherent feature of the omnilectic field, the fundamental all-encompassing field of reality, then wherever these gradients exceed threshold stability, life must arise. You can even write it like a formula. If coherence density is greater than or equal to a critical coherence density, then life emergence is inevitable. That critical density depends on the local NFN-CDG coupling, the torsion, the chirality. But where it's met, life isn't just possible. It's an unavoidable consequence of the universe's structure, a cosmic imperative.
And this isn't just abstract philosophizing. If this framework holds water, it opens up immediate, potentially transformative paths for science, for technology, changes how you might interact with the universe.
Absolutely. The framework suggests some incredible technology and application horizons. Biofield medicine. Imagine directly modulating morphogenetic fields for unprecedented regeneration, healing. Influencing the body's blueprint directly to repair damage, maybe even prevent disease before it manifests physically. Coherence-based communication. Phase-matched signaling across interstellar distances. No need for rockets or radio waves. Fundamentally changing SETI by tapping into universal coherence patterns. Planetary engineering. Could we enhance environmental coherence density, accelerate ecological recovery on Earth, maybe even help terraform other planets by optimizing their coherence environment, and even coherence computing, processors driven by NFNs using field geometry and coherent patterns instead of just on-off electrical states, entirely new paradigms of computation, potentially with unimaginable power.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us personally? Living our lives in what this framework suggests is a living cosmos.
Well, Lillian's own closing thought captures it beautifully. Life, in the FCHP NFN ontology, is the self-recursive intelligence of coherence, the cosmos perceiving and stabilizing itself in infinite fractal variations. It is not merely the end product of matter's complexity, but the organizing principle that shapes matter in the first place. From that first directional seed right up to galactic lattices, you see the same spiral repeating. Coherence creates form, which develops intelligence, which leads back to deeper coherence. It's this perpetual self-generating cycle of universal life. And we're not separate from it. We're an integral part of that cycle.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into Philip Lillian's work, it really challenges us, doesn't it, to see reality not as just random parts, but as this vast, interconnected, fundamentally alive field. What if? What if every act of observation we make, every act of creation, every thought we have is actually a tiny contribution, a contribution to the cosmos shaping itself, stabilizing its own coherence, maybe even coming to know itself through us, through all life? It's a powerful thought to leave you with. Consider the implications of living in a universe where life isn't the exception, but maybe, just maybe, the inescapable rule.